Greetings and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the fascinating case of Sam Bankman-Fried, and we're going to be looking into his birth chart and also his transit chart in astrology in order to get a better understanding of who this person is, how he came to prominence, and what's energetically causing his life to unfold the way it's unfolding. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about his bio first, where he finds himself now, and then we're going to dive into his natal chart. Then we're going to talk about how the eclipse from last year, the lunar eclipse in November, and the lunar eclipse today, October 28th, 2023, are causing major changes in his life, and not for the better. And it's what is actually causing his current downfall. And he, if you aren't aware of who he is a 31-year-old. He started a cryptocurrency exchange, mini empire, you could call it. And it was built in his mid-20s, and he became a major figure, major influential figure in this huge new industry of cryptocurrencies. And it all came crashing down very, very fast. And that all started to tumble last year, like I said, right at that eclipse day. Things turned for the worse for him. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But what his story does is it shows this important societal theme, and it's what made me so interested in learning about him in the last few days. He's actually on trial right now. He just took the stand yesterday on Friday, and he's going to undergo cross-examination next week from the prosecutors. But what made me so interested is how could there be such a massive rise and such a massive fall? How much of it was organic? How much of it was the negligence on his part and on people's part in trusting him? How could this happen? How could there be such a major loss? People lost hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of dollars, individuals, because they trusted his financial instruments. And how could a figure make such a massive mistake that is committing such serious crimes? And the people that were investigating his crimes early on were basically saying it's cut and dry, like it wasn't very complicated. He just took the money and spent it that other people gave to him. And so how could, the next question is, how could a person with such ability of proven mathematical savant level of abilities on analyzing the movements of money, how could he make such a grave and foolish error he's being accused of just plainly stealing people's money and spending it on real estate and on his family and on extravagant purchases. And at the same time, he says he's not a luxurious person that looks for luxury. Then why would you take all the money, and how could you mistrack all of that in such a negligent way? And the other really interesting element to it is that his parents are both law professors, specifically ethics professors. How could a son born from two ethics law professors commit the biggest financial fraud in history? And so all of these questions bring out that important thematic topic for us to learn about, which is, in this case, the complete abstraction of principles and money, where ideas and where the idea of money becomes so far separated from reality that a person can make such major miscalculations and really not even realizing they're making such major miscalculations. And the more a person gets separated from, philosophically from reality, the harder the fall becomes, the more the consequence becomes. And his consequence for rising so high is going to be a lifetime in jail if he's convicted. So that's a major thing we want to talk about. And as I go into the natal chart here, we're going to really look into how his mind is not connected to reality in a way that would have safeguarded him from making such massive calculation errors. That is, having $1 billion hole in your company that you don't know how to fill, and thinking that you can just change a couple spreadsheets and show it to an investor and that's going to solve the problem. And so let's go right into his natal chart, and we're going to talk about these themes as we go through the natal chart. So as you can see right here, this is a South Indian chart, and a few things I want to just go over before, if you're not familiar. This is the ascendant sign, Gemini. So this is the first sign, this is the second sign, Cancer, third sign, Leo, fourth sign, Virgo, and so on, the 12 signs. But as you notice, these 1s, 2, and 3, these are the house markers. These are the actual points in the sky, and sometimes the houses will fall into a sign that it's not an equal distribution, and this is called the Baba-Chalita Cusp method. And this method is very accurate when it comes to making predictions, and it really hones in, and we can get very, very accurate in terms of results and being able to predict to the exact day when something's happened by using this method of astrology. And as you can see, this is the third sign, but it holds the fourth and fifth cusp. And what it also does in an experience, it creates overlap and it creates deeper complexity on a person's experience. So while it's the third sign, Leo, ruled by the sun, it's his third sign. And so he'll have experiences with third house issues, but more specifically, Leo is now the owner, the ruler of the fifth and the fourth cusps. So experiences of the fifth house, experiences of the fourth house are being ruled by Leo. And anything that's aspecting Leo here is going to be aspecting these cusps. And those cusps are the finite experiences we have of what those cusps signify. So just a little bit of background about that. So when I talk about lords, it becomes very technical, but when I talk about the house lords, we're going to keep that in mind of when I'm talking about there's a difference between sign lords and cusp lords. So the first thing that I wanted to say, Gemini ascendant, that makes Mercury his ascendant lord. This is his body. This is his most present mental expression. We can see that Mercury is an analytical planet. It's very much having to do with being able to analyze and to objectively sort out patterns. It's the ability for pattern recognition. It's conjunct the 12th house cusp, the cusp of loss. So that tells us immediately this is a person that's going to be dealing with expenses throughout his life. They could be great expenses. They could be expenses that cause hardship, but expenses in general. His body and his direct expression in the world is connected with the 12th house. That could also mean isolation. It could also mean being far away from other people. Those are also 12th house experiences. It's in the 11th sign, meaning in the 11th sign, he's going to have the experience of 11th house significations because it's in the 11th sign. 11th is large groups of people, and it is communities. And his body is in the 11th, so which means that he finds himself as a part of a group. He'll feel in some way his life has to deal with group identity. And whether he feels validated or unvalidated depends on his experience, but larger groups are going to be important. It's also the gains that we get from the work that we do in life. So his life is going to have that general highlight. It's in Aries, sign of risk-taking, sign of going it alone, strategy and doing things that you believe are the right thing to, or you believe that should be done, and being willing to take a risk in order for a payoff. In the 12th house, the 12th house cusp, it's going to cause expenses, and whether those expenses are worth it or not is going to depend on whether how his life plays out. But the 12th is generally seen as a difficult place because people generally don't like to lose things. They like to gain things. So we see that there's in a risk-taking sign, his analytical abilities are connected to the house of loss. So that's one highlight. He is a cryptocurrency trader. He's dealing with risk-taking. He's dealing with large swaths of people, large funds, 11th house, and also the having to deal with gains and losses and expenses. He was a person that spent he spent more money in about a 5-year span of time than whole cities will spend in the course of 50 years. Hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. That's a lot of expense. And that's his ascendant lord right next to that 12th house cusp. Next, before we get to this main sign here, Aquarius with Venus, Saturn, and Mars, that's what we're going to be really focusing on, as well as Rahu. Before I get to that, I want to talk about Jupiter, Sun, and the Moon. Jupiter's in Virgo. Virgo is the sign of pure truth, and it's about getting to Virgo is often associated with mathematicians because math is a pure science. It's yes or no, it's on or off, and the numbers don't lie. And so it's a sign that creates people that are very strong and be able to decipher true from false. And it's a very systems and analytical sign. It's an earth sign, so it's about practicalities. And it's called a tamasic sign, which means that it's about solving problems. So it's naturally a very great position if someone's got a healthy Virgo to be someone that is who uses numbers in whatever profession they use, managing numbers. Jupiter is a planet that is able to create abstract concepts from what we experience in daily life. So you take a law, it's written down in a book. What Jupiter does is it takes that law and then expands upon it and brings in principles such as what is justice. And so we have the letter of the law, and then we have the spirit of the law, and that's what Jupiter brings. It's the spirit of the law. So in Jupiter, in Virgo, what Jupiter can do is it makes a person able to abstract numbers, to put numbers into large patterns, and to be able to see meaning in a lot of different, having a really strong analytical ability to organize huge swaths of numbers. It gives a person a strong research ability for this. They can be really good at sciences. And Sam Bankman-Fried, that's what he was basically known for. He was known for being able to consolidate numbers, very confusing numbers. Ever since he was a young kid, he was able to do very complex puzzles and be able to sort out information in a way that was very high level, in the highest percentile of his age group. And so Jupiter there, what it's doing, Jupiter is also the planet of wealth. It makes wealth and numbers abstract, and it can become a positive. It can be very positive for a person who's able to take numbers and take money and take wealth and be able to see how it can be used for greater good, because that's what Jupiter wants to do. Jupiter is such an expansive planet. It wants to make things better for society as a whole. And so in Virgo, mathematically, how can I make math a positive contributor to society? Well, to see a person's ability to do that, what's Jupiter's dignity? How well does Jupiter feel there? Jupiter treats Mercury and Venus as enemies. And if they're more than 3 signs away, it makes them a temporary enemy. So Jupiter is in the dignity of a great enemy sign. And that's like being in a great enemy's house. What are you going to do in a great enemy's house? You want to leave as soon as you can. You just don't feel comfortable. You have to ask to do everything, and you're probably going to get a no if you get it. You just don't spend time in great enemies' houses. And so Jupiter is not in a condition to positively benefit very well, or to be able to use those analytical abilities to that idealistic perspective. That's what Jupiter does. It wants to idealize things and reach for the top and reach for things to become as good as possible. So Jupiter's in a poor condition. Jupiter's the 7th lord. And the 7th is the house of other people. It's the house of the public. It's the house of business dealings. So right away, the ruler of business, the ruler of the public, how we deal with the public is is feeling bad about where it is. So that means that what Jupiter is able to perform and produce is very low. And Jupiter rules the sun and the moon, the two planets of our core identity. The moon is also the Atmakaraka, the main planet for a person's understanding of their own consciousness. And the Atmakaraka, I've talked about in other videos. It's a really important planet. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that Sam Bankman-Fried became a major public figure very fast. But he was never seen as charismatic. He was always rambling in his explanations of things. He avoids direct answering of questions. Now, even in court, he is a very unkempt and not the kind of person that even attempts to portray themselves in a dignified light. People say he looked like he didn't shower for days. He slept in a beanbag. His public persona was the misunderstood genius that didn't care about his personal appearance at all. So putting oneself into public in that manner doesn't immediately attract people to want to, say, invest in that person. But since he had such a talent as a young person, people were able to overlook that. Oh, well, that's just how he is. He just wears baggy shorts and t-shirts when he meets with world leaders just because he's just so smart and he doesn't care. People will overlook that. Oh, he doesn't need to wear a suit. His brain is somewhere else, and we need to look up to the person like that. So his public ability to be a public figure is in a great enemy sign. His dealings with the public, his dealings in business as well. The 7th is the house of trade, so how a person deals in business, very poor. He came out later on after the scandals broke that he was really good at managing people and his company and managing his business contacts when things were going smoothly. But as soon as things went bad, he was so far over his head that he kind of burrowed himself into a hole. He had no idea how to deal with things in adverse times. And then Pisces, the sun and the moon are both in Pisces. Again, it's a major theme of abstraction. Pisces is everything can exist at once, and I don't judge anything for what it is. It just is. And again, the experience of each sign is neither good or bad. It's an experience. So the sun and the moon, both in Pisces, will make a person very able to entertain abstractions, to be able to dive into concepts and be able to sift through things and be able to not say this is right or wrong. It just is what it is. It can make a person very imaginative, and it can make a person be able to, I always say, dive into the depths, because Pisces is the ocean. So when we have the ocean of experience, these planets of identity in the ocean of experience, it can really detach us from reality. And so, as I've been saying, Pisces and Virgo, they're on the opposite sides, but with Jupiter there, in Virgo, it really creates a personality that is philosophically detached from concerns of everyday life. And that is a major theme for his life. He always claimed that he was a utilitarian until he discovered effective altruism. And utilitarianism, which is now under huge scrutiny, essentially says that what a person should do is what gives the most amount of good to the most amount of people. And so good, what's good, And effective altruism is really similar in that his philosophy, his Jupiter, is saying, I want to make as much money as possible in order to give it all away as much as possible. So how much money? It doesn't matter. $1 trillion. It's such an abstract number. It's you can't fit $1 trillion in this room. And so again, it's so abstract. It's so distant. I'm just gonna get as much money and give it all away. That was his whole purpose in life, and or his purpose with his cryptocurrency business. And what happened was that he never really, those concepts of utilitarianism and effective altruism the fault of them are that a person that really dives into those philosophies won't have a strong connection of what are the ends and what are the means. In his trial, his on and off girlfriend who was running one of his companies said that testified that lying to people or stealing from people weren't as important if those resulted in helping people. That's called the ends. They justify the means. And so any philosophy that entertains that possibility that the ends can justify the means, his two philosophical outlooks, the problem that they run into is that you do things to others that you wouldn't want done to yourself, but then you find a way to justify it. And so that is what basically led him to where he is now, facing major consequences to this really, it's a philosophy that breaks down quickly once you get into that idea of do the ends justify the means. And you can, spin so many kinds of webs of rationale, but in the end, those are just rationale. When it hits the ground, when the rubber meets the road, problems emerge and chaos ensues because there's no they don't root themselves into anything. It's kind of based on a person's own way of rationalizing their actions. And so all of this plays into the general theme of our society, is that he was a person who was able, he never had a problem with money growing up. He went to the most elite schools. His parents were known for their parties and their salons and their discussion of intellectual topics. There was just never there was never a material need in his life where material needs were hard to come by, so to say. They could have had tough times as a family early on. But what this created for him was this detachment from what money actually is. And so to him, it seems like they were just numbers. And if he can make numbers work this way, he can make numbers work that way. And so that brings that theme of society where we are, is that what is our money? What is our value these days? It's numbers on computers. And our society, and you could say venture capitalism and the fiat banking systems that we have, the central banking systems of unlimited printing of money, that's our environment. That's what we're all accustomed to having in this past 80 years or so, actually since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created. So over 100 years, this money has become more abstract because it gets printed based on nothing. And he's a product of that. He is a person that imagine calling someone and say, hey, can you give me $100 million? And they send it to you in your computer and you have no reaction to it. It's just, okay, there's 100 million. Okay, I'm gonna buy that stadium. That's 60 million, 135 million. Here, mom, here's 15 million. And imagine being in that place of mind where it doesn't matter to you, that amount of money, and being able to just send money around like that. This is a person that had no appreciation for it. He was so inexperienced handling with all that money. What he's accused of doing is having people put money into his account, into his company, that say, I want to invest in cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrencies by themselves, it's an abstraction. And that's a whole different topic. And that's what his whole world is an abstraction of money. So people would put money into their account, they say $100,000, and I'm going to use that $100,000 credit in my account to then buy cryptocurrencies. What Sam Bankman-Fried was accused of doing is, okay, there's $1,000 there. I'm going to take that $1,000 through a secret channel that he coded in, allegedly, to his system to send the money to his account and then to buy things with it, such as houses, real estate, family gifts, things of that sort, celebrity endorsements. So he thought, for some reason, he thought that could sustain itself. He could just move abstract numbers into other places and get things for it. So there was no kind of fail-safe system of saying, yeah, that's not right. It's all just numbers on screens to this kind of person who has such a strong Pisces, Jupiter, and Virgo connection like that. And so that's the major theme that we're seeing play out in him. And that's really where I think where his downfall was, a total detachment from the practical realities of what he was doing and thinking that he could just move numbers around and think that that was going to work. And now he's trying to, we'll get into now whether I think he's lying or not. And so when we talk about lying and criminality, what we're talking about is the 8th house in our chart. And the 8th house is the 12th house from the 9th house. The 9th house is law and justice and higher principles and living by a code of ethics. That's the 9th house. 12 houses from that is the 8th house, which means that the 8th house is the house of loss of the 9th house, because the 12th house is the house of loss. So the 12th from the 9th, the 8th is the loss of ethics and a code of honor, a code of conduct, and a guiding philosophy that's based on divine justice. So that means the 8th house is breaking those things, breaking the law, breaking norms. And it could be a person it could be a good thing, a taboo. Sometimes taboos are necessary in society to break a destructive code of conduct in society. But in general, when we talk about breaking the law, we talk about the 8th house. So Rahu is right on top of the 8th house. If I remember, the 8th house is at 4 degrees Capricorn, Rahu is at 7. So that's a 3-degree difference. So it's right on top of the 8th. Rahu is the point in the sky that creates illusions and extroverted behavior. 8th house, crimes. We have a person that doesn't understand. Rahu is the point in the sky that we have to go towards to learn about in this incarnation. Rahu is also connected to the 9th. So this is a person that has an experimental attitude, a very extroverted, a very misguided posture towards criminality, breaking of taboos, and also laws in and of themselves. And Rahu has no aspects to it from signs. We have sign aspects. They're called Rashi aspects. Rahu's getting no gentle or helpful aspects to it or support from healthy planets. That means this person, Sam Bankman-Fried, is all alone when it comes to trying to figure out what is criminality and what is justice. Look at where we are. He seems to be lost when it comes to ethics, despite having an upbringing that taught him what those things were and these exalted ideas of what goodness is. I mean, he comes from a very, very left-wing, university-educated background, yet he doesn't have any, and yet he finds himself as one of the biggest financial criminals, accused of being one of the financial criminals of all time, because he has no idea what he's doing. He's got Rahu there. He's got illusions surrounding all of those things. And I don't think, no matter what his parents' political background was, it wasn't going to help him, considering this natal chart. So that makes Saturn, the Lord of Capricorn, the ruler of both of these houses, both of these experiences. Criminality, the 8th, breaking the law, breaking codes of conduct, and 9th, the law itself, divine justice, and having a belief system that's based in justice. Saturn rules those things. Saturn is actually the planet with the highest dignity in the chart. It's Mula Trikona. It's in the second most powerful position in the chart. If it was in Libra, it would be the only other place that's more powerful than where it is in Aquarius. It's connected, so it's a strong planet. This house, as I said, Aquarius, is going to be a big focus from here on out. It's the natural 9th sign. It's the 9th sign in the chart, holding the 10th and 11th houses. So the 10th experience and the 11th experience. The 10th being our experience of our work and our career. 11th being our experience of the gains we get from our career, income. We've got a strong Saturn influence, both of these things, that can make someone a hard worker, someone that is very dedicated to what they're doing and be able to persevere over long periods of time and have a long-term vision for what they want He was someone that he was someone that did have an expansive idea of what he wanted to do in the world, or what he would like to do in the world. His belief system wanting to spread as much goodness as possible. And it's happening in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is the humanitarian sign. It's the sign of seeing everyone is connected under one umbrella. And that umbrella is nature. It's the natural world. And so it creates left-wing ideologies, Aquarius, because it's about seeing more of the working class and seeing more of a collective unity amongst people. And so that these day and age, that's what left-wing politics really is having an empathy and an understanding for people that aren't in positions of power, and feeling that it's the society's responsibility to take care of itself. It's very noble. Left-wing, so-called. It's not good or bad. It just is it's a philosophy that wants to make sure that everyone is being accounted for, that we can't forget the small person. And Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius, is the small person. It's the everyday worker. And so we see these heavy emphasis, Venus, Mars, and Saturn all in Aquarius, helping him find value, Venus, in a humanitarian approach to ideology. So what's making this so troubling, this conjunction? First of all, Saturn and Mars hurt each other mutually. Saturn is an enemy to Mars. Saturn gets hurt by Mars, doesn't like Mars around. And Mars, any planet that's next to Saturn, gets starved by Mars, gets like a rush of cold and feels frigid around Saturn. They're within less than a degree from each other. That's incredible, like 40 seconds from one another. Exactly 40 seconds. Or 40 minutes, excuse me. And so you couldn't get much tighter than that. And what that does is it causes a person to see a goal or see something that they want to accomplish, have a conflict that they want to maybe attack head on, and then I want to go do this, and Saturn pushes the brakes on it. So it causes a very strong inner conflict of what I should do or what I can't do, what I can do. And it creates a major tension internally within a person. And the closer they are together, the more a person is going to feel an internal frustration about what's in their control and what's not in their control. And so when we talk about house lords, Saturn is the lord of all of these different experiences. Mars is the lord. He's the natural 6th sign, and he's the lord of the 12th. Saturn, the lord of the 8th, conjunct the lord of the 12th. It's causing losses from taboo behavior, losses from criminality, losses from, let's say, one's philosophy. It's a source of expense. You don't want to see either 6th, 8th, or 12th house. Those are called the difficult houses. You don't want to see too many interactions with those planets. It causes much more speed bumps and tumultuous experiences in a person's life. Venus is the 6th cusp lord. So Venus is causing major obstacles to both Saturn and, or more of everyday obstacles. But Saturn being the 8th lord, the ups and downs, breaking the law, these two lords conjunct one another is going to cause even more problematic experiences that can cause major fluctuations in a person's life. And before I jump too far, 8th house is also other people's money. Rahu here has no idea. It's a person that has no idea what the true value of other people's money is. Rahu is a trial and error planet. You learn where Rahu is positioned. You learn about Rahu's significations through making mistakes. And what mistakes were made, they're gigantic. So as you can see in his chart, and here we have the Ascendant Lord looking right in, is sign aspecting this area. His body, his personality, and his path in life is directly involved with the experiences of loss, Mars, the Lord of the 12th, and Lord of the Ascendant. Saturn, 8th and 9th experiences, 10th and 11th. So this is a very consolidate. So many experiences are locked into what Saturn is doing, essentially, is what that's saying. 11th, 10th, 9th, and 8th are all directly involved with Saturn because Saturn's the lord of all of those houses. So whatever happens to Saturn in this person's life, it's going to have major ramifications. Everything's kind of grouped together. His work, his gains from work, his other people's money, his understanding of crime, and his understanding of justice are all grouped together with whatever's happening to Saturn in the chart. And so we see, and again, that it's this conjunction that's causing such a major problem with his understandings of loss, his ability to gain and make money. And Venus here does help Saturn a little bit because Saturn is a friend of Venus, so it softens Saturn up, which could make, so Saturn is this unkempt, lazy person that lives in the woods. Well, yeah, his personal appearance, Mercury, that's what he looked like. He looked like a guy that just rolled out of bed every single day from his beanbag and then gets on a CNN interview. Venus softens that up a little bit, so it makes him a little bit more able to be, if he didn't have Venus there, he would be totally rejected in terms of someone that could be taken seriously, because if they're not taking care of themselves, they're not able to take care of other people, let alone hundreds of or tens of billions of dollars. And so Venus makes him a little bit more softer on the edges, a little bit more diplomatic, can help his speech a little bit, make him a little bit more likable. But engaged so close to these two planets in major conflict, it's going to hurt his understanding of value. Venus is our understanding of what we have and what we can give, and what means something to us, and therefore what we accept in return. And in short, that means our understanding of give and take. This conflict, this internal conflict of what is mine, what isn't mine, is getting so broken, is breaking up his ability to understand what true value is. Venus is really getting hurt badly within this conjunction. Even though Venus is the natural fifth lord in the natural ninth house, since there's so many other experiences overlapping, the 6th, the 10th, and the 11th, it can't just be a beneficial planet, because for his experience, because if you have the natural fifth house here in the natural ninth house, that's the makings of a very successful, fortunate person. But since there's other experiences, these other house cups overlapping, it's not so easy for him. Otherwise, it would have been an easy way to money. And there wasn't easy. He did make money. Money was always easy for him to come by. Things of value, luxuries. He said he never liked luxuries. He didn't care about them. But how many other people have a $32 million penthouse that you buy? That's a luxury. And that came easily in his life. Natural fifth house, Lord in the natural ninth house. He was able to come up. He did experience a lot of fortunate things happen to his life. So as you can see with this it sounded like I went through a lot of things, but I really didn't. You could really go into all of these different positions in a lot more depth. And especially if the person was sitting here with me, I could really dive more deeply into how a person is going through these experiences. But as you can see, even with Ketu here next to the second house of speech, he's a very introverted. Ketu is an enclosing energy. It's a tightness. He's tight in his speech. He's tight in his ability to express what he wants to say. But Ketu does bring natural experience. So he does have natural experience coming into this life with third house things, technical abilities, and second house things, which would be finances in general. He was a financial guru, so to say. Finances, money in the bank account, the resources that you can work with. And Ketu is a mathematical planet, so his whole life was surrounding about handling money. So he does have a talent for that coming into this life. But now let's go into a little bit more of his transits. And his problems all began in Ketu. Ketu Vimshatari period. So after his Mercury major period, he enters into Mercury major period here, started in 2005. His Ketu major period started in July 2022. And that's really when everything started to unravel. So when we look at his chart, his life started to unravel once Ketu started to take charge of his major period. It's called Vimshatari Dasha, when he entered into Ketu Dasha. What did his experience of Ketu, how did he experience it? In the immediate sense, he experienced isolation. People were starting to leave his company. All the financial transactions and the databases and the sheets were all starting to become more and more problematic within his inner circles. He began to become more and more isolated in general. Ketu is this isolating force. It makes us feel like we're alone in our struggle in life. The more a person's Ketu is not functioning well, the more tightly they feel bound up, and they need to be perfect at some exact little thing. And as long as they're perfect at some exact little thing or some experience in life, they're going to feel safe. We want to feel safe. Ketu means flag, and flag is where we stake our flag in the ground. He stakes his flag in the ground in having an emotional security, Cancer. So as long as I'm here in my tight little area, I can feel safe in my life. Second house are financial responsibilities. As long as I'm taking care of my financial responsibilities, I feel safe. And as long as I'm technically proficient, I'll feel safe. And so his experience of becoming more and more isolated starting in July 2022, it was starting, his financial empire started to unravel. And let's look into his transits now. And this is what I saw yesterday that it kind of blew me away when I saw it. Last year, there was a lunar eclipse on November 8th. And if we see here, November 8th, we see the moon 18 degrees, the sun is at 16 degrees. So let's go an hour back and let's find the exact eclipse moment. 1606, 1609. So in New York City at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's the exact moment of let's double check this, still a little bit left. So right around 5 o'clock in the morning, November 8th, huge, this eclipse, Mars next to Rahu, getting eclipsed by Rahu. We have a conjunction of Mercury and the sun. So the Mercury is right on top of the sun. So the question is how is this playing out in his chart that day of that eclipse? Well, that conjunction rearing its ugly head, that sun, Saturn, we have both eclipse points. The moon, a lunar eclipse is going to cause events to happen that can kind of blow up in our face if they're affecting certain parts of our chart. But the whole eclipse is directly hitting that almost to the exact degree at, what is that? What are they at? About 12? Just a couple degrees from an exact square. So in his chart, the Logna Lord, we need the Logna Lord, Mercury, that's your body, that's yourself. We need the sun, also your divine, your individuality, both conjunct, both squaring, the 8th Lord, crimes, 9th Lord, justice, 11th Lord, gains, and the 10th Lord, work in life. Mars is the 12th Lord. So all of the 12th Lord losses are being hit by that eclipse. Also, to make it more fun, there is a trine to the sun, which is a beneficial aspect. So something is going to really land into his lap this day. Something is going to be affecting his personal life, that being his investments, because the sun is the Lord of the 5th, investments, and sense of personal happiness, internal happiness, the 4th. So it could actually, he could have been taking this day as something positive. And Jupiter right on top of the moon right there, which means that his moon's getting activated, which means that his moon 2nd and 3rd house issues are getting activated, which also activates his Ketu. And then look at this, Saturn over Venus, almost an exact conjunction. in the sky, which means that the planet of limitation, the planet of putting the brakes on our life and giving us a realistic view of things is hitting Venus. Our sense of value. Venus is his sixth lord. That's the lord of battles, the lord of conflict. And then Venus is the natural 12th house. So what happened on this day? It was the day that his main rival, CZ is his acronym. I can't remember his full name. He's the owner of Binance, his major competitor for cryptocurrency exchanges, tweeted out that there were problems in his financial balance sheets and that he was going to be divesting from his company. And that is what set off the entire unraveling of his life. Because within a week, he was bankrupt, I believe. They were filing for bankruptcy because all of the money that he said was in the company was not there. He had actually spent it all. And within about a month, he was arrested. And he went on a speaking tours. He was trying to explain himself. His whole company collapsed. And it was all initiated on this exact day. Actually, I think it was the day after, the 9th. It was on one of these 2 days, right at that eclipse, launched a huge breakup of his entire work life, all of his gains, all of accused of crimes, breaking the law, conflict with rivals, investments. Everything was getting squared by that eclipse. Really unfortunate to have that intense conjunction right in that eclipse point. And so eclipses can really throw a person's life into complete turmoil. And as you look into other charts, we can look at the D60 chart, we can look at the D45 chart. These charts are meant to confirm what we're seeing in the main transit charts. Chantaramsha is our chart of fortune. So we can keep looking. I'm not going to go too deep in there. In the house of fortune, we see Rahu here, experimental and very, you could say, wild when it comes to the law. Saturn, again, is the ruler of the 8th here. So that means that Saturn is going to, when Saturn's getting lit up here, it's going to be affecting all the other charts of Saturn in a certain way. So in this house of fortune, his house of big breaks and ups and downs, the 8th, is going to be affected. In his D60, Saturn's debilitated. It's going to be affecting his 7th house in his D60, which is overall effects, which is his dealings with the public. It's going to be affecting his happiness because Saturn's involved in this eclipse. In the 45th, also full effects. Saturn rules Jupiter, debilitated, rules Venus, his ability for value and his ability to be diplomatic. He really set himself off to try to diplomatize his way out of it. Ruler of the 7th again, losses. So as you can see, astrology, we can really take it to a large extent. All I really wanted to illustrate here was that eclipse is what set off, and it was just so interesting when I looked up the date. It was that exact day, if not a little bit after that day, that set into motion his entire downfall. From that single tweet from his rival. So let's shoot ahead a year and see where we are today. And today we're at the 28th of October. And that is the lunar eclipse today. Where's the moon? The moon's at 28 degrees. The sun's at 4. So let's go back. This is in New York. Just double check. Whoops. So the eclipse is going to be happening in New York at exactly, so he's currently in jail in New York, and it's going to be happening around this evening at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon or so is when the actual eclipse is hitting. Look what's still involved. We have, thankfully it's not an exact hit on the from the eclipse points, the sun and the moon. But we have Jupiter, his seventh lord, which is his dealings with the public, squaring all of those lords, Saturn and Mars, bundled up right here. We have Mercury and Mars pounding it as well in an exact conjunction. His body, his lord of loss, hitting his loss, hitting his career, hitting his gains, hitting his justice, hitting his other people's money, his criminality. It's really unfortunate that he's having such a hard hit again on those two critical lords, that Saturn and that Mars there. So what that turns into is that he just took the stand yesterday in his own defense in front of the jury, and so that conjunction was still active yesterday, and it's even more active because we're talking about an eclipse today. So his public reputation, Jupiter, getting smashed. And so as you can see, this eclipse is also causing a lot of chaos in his natal chart. And going into next week, when the possible days of his judgment, if he's going to be seen convicted or not, it's not looking, still getting really hard square here. Squares from Mars, conflict, planet of loss for him, and his Lagna Lord. It's still a really tough conjunction. Just from this really simple technique, I'm not seeing that good of an outcome for him. There's a lot of other ways you can look at if he's going to win or not. I'm not going to get into that because this video has already gone pretty long. But as you can see, it's these 2 eclipse days and 2 eclipse weeks that he's just getting smashed. And he's getting smashed in the sense that planets are not his... It has to do with his house lords as well, because not everyone's going to have this same effect, obviously. It's where his houses are, what planets rule different houses, all depending on the time he was born. And so, in summary, this is a character who made major mistakes, and his defense is that he was negligent and that other people in his company were actually running the crimes. That's not what they said. That's not what they testified. They said that he was in charge. So we'll see what happens next week, if he's convicted or not. But his story is really fascinating because we can look into his chart, see where the problems emerge in his chart. I think a lot of it has to do with that Rahu having no real connection to other people's money, learning about how other people's money can be managed, 8th being the other people's money, and having no help from other planets, softening that understanding up or giving it more in-depth perspective on it. And we have such a tough conjunction between Saturn and Mars in Aquarius. And since, because of the house configuration, those two are dominating his experience, those 2 planets. And right now we see him in a place where he's totally stuck. And he could be stuck in a box forever. He could be stuck in jail forever. And that's one of the main experiences of Saturn-Mars conjunction, is stuck. I want to put my effort forward, Mars, to do something. Saturn says, hold up, you can't do it now. You have to do something else, or you just can't do that. Saturn limits you. Mars wants to just get things done. When those two are within 40 minutes of each other, you're talking about someone that doesn't really, they're in the internal mechanisms that they use to get things done and they use to deal with difficulties are fighting against each other so constantly that it makes a person feel like they're stuck in the rut and they can't get out. That's where he is right now, and the eclipse is really exploding that experience, because he's now on the federal court defending himself after the prosecution just laid out a really damning case, and public opinion is not in his favor already. And so that Saturn-Mars experience, God bless him. I hope he's doing okay, because this is a really tough situation he finds himself in. But when you gamble away hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money, and you don't hedge your bets, and you think that you can just solve the problem by talking yourself out of it. It's a total it's a total negligence and lack of understanding of practical realities. And that's what I was talking about with the sun and moon in Pisces, two key important planets to our self-identity. In Pisces like that, not everyone's going to be that detached from reality. But as I was saying, Jupiter, our understanding of morality, our understanding of ethics and money in Virgo, really takes numbers to an abstraction. So that combination is also very hurtful to him. He's not able to really deal with he's only dealing with the damage he really caused right now. And if he can talk himself out of it, he talked himself out of it. But and he'll save himself 100 years in jail. But if he's not able to talk himself out of it, and that jury of 12 people say that they don't believe him, and that he knowingly took other people's money and spent it unlawfully without their permission to spend it on extravagances, it doesn't really matter what your excuse is. You did do that, and there's consequences. And I mean, imagine investing any amount of money and saying, "Yep, I lost that because he bought his mom a new house." You know, his intention was to take care of his family, or he bought a sports stadium. You know, I lost my money, but he got some time in the sun as the face of a cryptocurrency empire. So he was just one example of cryptocurrency failure. There's a lot of frauds in the industry, but it's a major signal to the rest of our culture. Look what happens when you play with money in a way that is just so detached from what is money. Money is a representation of value and energy. So when it becomes just a number on a computer, it's a signal, it's a sign of our culture, a sign of our times that we can't continue down that road. We have to get back to what is valuable, what is worth. And the more abstracted we become about money, the more we are subjecting ourselves to making very grave mistakes, because we're just not in that grounded understanding of what true worth and true real world value is. And so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about this case, if you have any comments, please feel free to share. I love doing these videos about about characters in our culture and what they represent. They can go on a little long. Apologize if this was too long, but as you can see, you can really I could go for another couple hours, unfortunately, about just studying his planets and studying his planetary configurations. Each one carries its own complexity. And remember that the more accurate the birth time you have, the more accurate you can become with your predictions, and the more accurate you can be with understanding what's happening within another person.